Next on Imágenes, a new plebiscite in Puerto Rico. Saludos, I'm Miguel Perez. 100 years after Puerto Rico became a colony of the United States, next month, Puerto Ricans will get another chance to have a say on the political status of the island. On December 13, another Puerto Rican plebiscite, the second in 5 years, will ask Puerto Ricans whether they want the island to become a state of the Union, an independent country, or maintain some sort of Commonwealth relationship with the United States. But like other plebiscites held in the past, this one again is being held without the full participation of the U.S. Congress, which means Congress will not be bound to abide by the will of the Puerto Rican people if they choose another option rather than the status quo. To discuss the new Puerto Rican plebiscite and its potential ramifications for Puerto Ricans and other Latinos here on the mainland, we have assembled a panel of representatives of the three main options for Puerto Rico. And on the telephone from New York City is Xavier Romeo, who will speak for statehood. And here in the studio are Jaime Areizaga, who supports Commonwealth, and Juan Rodriguez, who wants to see Puerto Rico become an independent nation. Before we begin, let's take a look at a historical perspective in this report by Carmen Cecín.
During the early days of colonization, Puerto Rico was considered the key to control of the Caribbean Sea. Its strategic location between the Greater and Lesser Antilles made it a target for European invasion forces that often tried to destroy Spain's military might in the region. For over 400 years, Spain would not relinquish its stronghold over the island. But then came the Spanish-American War, and after a small battle, the island surrendered to the United States in 1898. Ironically, a year earlier, Spain had given Puerto Rico its autonomy. 1998 marks the 100th anniversary of the United States' control over the island. It is a year in which Puerto Rico's political status is a question mark. Leading historian Olga Wagenheim, who has written a book on pre-Columbian Puerto Rico, can't wait to write the next chapter in Puerto Rico's history.
I am doing the period of the U.S.-Puerto Rico relations separately because I feel that there are some areas that haven't been researched yet.
Saida Mostacero is the former chairperson of New Jersey's Comité de Noviembre. This is a nonprofit group that in November celebrates the contributions of Puerto Ricans. She had this to say on the issue.
Well, right now we're kind of in a limbo kind of a state, where we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But everybody is kind of worried about it, because whatever will happen that is not what we have right now is going to impact on everything.
The 1998 Hispanic Heritage Celebration being held at the Newark Public Library will take a look at the last 100 years in Puerto Rico, a century of change and uncertainty.
There's no single narrative here. Puerto Rico, like many small countries, has been in between empires, between different international forces, and it has negotiated its way, sometimes making huge mistakes, sometimes maneuvering.
On one side we have independence, on the other side we have statehood. And it was so, once they taught us to walk the tightrope, it's very accommodating.
It kind of eats at us wherever we are because it's been unfinished, it's uncertain. That degree of uncertainty is something that permeates everything. Our sense of identity, our literature, our self-image. So whichever way it goes, and we all have our strong feelings, but it needs to be settled. So I hope we can do it very soon.
It needs to be settled. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thanks.
Xavier, do you hear me? Are you on the telephone?
Yes, I am.
Good. Everybody that we saw on this tape, Xavier and gentlemen here in the studio, had the opinion, I think, that the decision had to be made. Something has to be done. I mean, it's about time the Puerto Ricans define their status once and for all. Do you agree? Do you think that this plebiscite coming up in December is going to do that? Juan.
Well, I don't know if the plebiscite will do that. It's obviously up to the democratic will of the people of Puerto Rico, but I think everybody in the island and in our community here in the mainland agrees that Puerto Rico is in a situation unlike any other. We have a saying in Puerto Rico in Spanish that says, no hay mal que dure 100 años ni cuerpo que lo aguante. That is, there's no ill that will last 100 years, nor nobody who can put up with it. But the fact is that we've been a colony of the U.S. for over 100 years, and it's only normal that there be a yearning in Puerto Rico and in our community here for a definition now.
Juan, how do you feel about that?
I think that the plebiscite in December will not alter in terms of local the situation, and because it is non-binding. Nevertheless, our participation, the Independentistas, specifically the Puerto Rican Independence Party, is because there will be political consequences because of that participation. Ultimately, even though Xavier talks about the democratic rule of the people, Congress has a big say in terms of what status will be granted to Puerto Rico, because we are subject to the territorial clause of the Constitution.
I mean, how do the Commonwealth people feel about this particular plebiscite?
Well, as you know, Commonwealth has won all referenda throughout the history of Puerto Rico, even the one imposed by the Statehood Party in 1993. We went to that vote and we won. And this plebiscite is a farce. That's how we feel about it. This plebiscite doesn't have the backing of Congress. It's the first time that a plebiscite is imposed without consensus by the political forces. Here you have the three political forces. Well, the ballot that will be used on this plebiscite, which is here, doesn't even include the names of the three alternatives. As you can see, they're numbers. And all the definitions, as you can see, there are 4. That's the first thing. They've tried to split Commonwealth because Commonwealth is the option favored by the majority. So they have drafted what they say is the current definition of Commonwealth, even they don't dare put the name there because they know Puerto Ricans want the Estado Libre Asociado. So they describe it in their own way. All these definitions were written by the stakeholders. So if you go to column 3, which is the statehood column, it has all the good things about statehood. Doesn't even mention federal taxes in that definition. Whereas in the first column, they say that you will have to speak English under Commonwealth. Then they have included here an option 2, which is an associated republic, which is an independence with some ties to the U.S. as a way to split the Commonwealth people, an option that has never been favored by any group in Puerto Rico. Indeed, the people that are going to get that money had a lot of trouble getting 3,000 signatures just to support that option. Option 3 is their statehood, which they wrote, all very nice. Option 4, it's independence, which they wrote. The independence option.
Let's give Xavier a chance to respond to this. Xavier, did you guys define everybody else's option?
Oh, absolutely. The legislature in Puerto Rico and eventually with signature of the governor defined 5 alternatives, not 4, because there is a 5th alternative, which is none of the above.
Right.
Whomever is dissatisfied with some of the definitions has the choice of voting in that alternative. But there are a number of things that are not completely historically accurate. We will recall that in 1967, when the Commonwealth Party of Puerto Rico had total control over the political landscape, that they imposed the very definitions that were used in 1967. What's going on here is essentially not a conspiracy, but there's a very simple political calculation by those who favor Commonwealth, and that is, we are a Commonwealth right now. And if we do not have a plebiscite or a referendum, by the way, this is a referendum, not a plebiscite, because it is not binding, then we shall remain a Commonwealth. What is not clearly stated by those who complain about the definitions in the ballot is that the definitions were based on the House bill that passed the Senate, and that those definitions in the House bill that passed the Senate and the Senate resolution that passed the House and the Senate resolution that passed the Senate clearly said that the status of Puerto Rico is that of an unincorporated territory at best, if not a colony, as my brothers and sisters on the independent side are fond of saying, and I happen to agree with. So the onus should not be on those who say that the definitions are wrong or are illegal or unconstitutional. The onus should be on the Commonwealthers to come forward and say why it is that the definition of Commonwealth is somewhat erroneous or not legal, which actually they have done. And they lost in federal court in Puerto Rico, and then now they have no other recourse but to go to the ballot box. But ultimately, in order to be fair to the quote-unquote fourth option, there's something that's being overlooked here. The fourth option, which is really a federated republic type of option, like the Federated Republic of Micronesia, is an option that actually exists. It's an option that is recognized by U.S. law and by international law as a viable decolonizing option, and I see no reason why people in Puerto Rico should not be offered that possibility. Then
So I want to clarify something here. Juan, help me. Help me with something. Everybody's been mentioning the binding, using the word binding, and I think we need to explain what binding is all about. Xavier mentioned that in previous plebiscites that this is not really a plebiscite but a referendum because it's not binding. The other plebiscites were called plebiscites. They were not binding either. Explain what binding is all about. Why Congress needs to be bound by the what the will of the Puerto Rican people.
Sure. First of all, he may call it a referendum, but that's what the governing party in Puerto Rico is saying. It's a plebiscite, and that's what it's being reported as a plebiscite. The binding issue is that when the United States, Spain ceded Puerto Rico in 1898, in the Paris Treaty, it stated that Congress shall have the power to determine the political situation of the island and dispose of that island in the near future or the later future. Basically, since we are in agreement that Puerto Rico is subject to the territorial clause of the United States, and Congress has ultimate sovereignty over Puerto Rico, it is necessary for the United States to decide what it wants to offer Puerto Rico and let the people vote based on that decision. I mean, Congress has a responsibility as in the Constitution.
And in all the plebiscites that Puerto Rico has held, not ever has Congress said whatever the Puerto Rican people decide we will abide by.
It's a way
During the last administration of the Commonwealth Party, the Popular Democratic Party, Governor Hernandez Colón at the time brought the three parties together, the Statehood Party, the Independence Party, and the Commonwealth Party, and brought a joint effort in Congress by consensus, trying to obtain the acquiescence of Congress in advance that they would respect the results. But there is major opposition in Congress and in the United States to consider statehood for Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico would be very expensive for the federal treasury. As you know, Puerto Rico is a nation with its own culture, identity, language, idiosyncrasia, and as a result, there is a lot of opposition. Also, Puerto Rico will obviously be a democratic state, so the Republicans are against considering Puerto Rico for statehood. Let's have some things clear here. Number one, there has never been support, a majority support for statehood. Statehood has never won the support of the Puerto Rican people. So what this plebiscite is trying to do is to create an artificial majority for statehood by splitting Commonwealth, by keeping us away from this ballot. And yes, we're going to have to go to the fifth option, which doesn't even have a 5. It's called none of the above. And that's what the Popular Democratic Party has decided to do. And as a punishing way from the statehood governor, which he referred, Xavier accepted that they defined, that the statehood party, which is the party in government, instead of looking for consensus, decided to impose their views. So here we have an election in which one group is deciding the rules of the game, and one of those is that in none of the above, we don't have any funding. All the other options are getting $500,000. Commonwealth is without money, and the governor even tried to keep us away from having electoral representatives.
Let me ask Javier. Javier,
can I just make just a few comments, because there's so many things.
Briefly, please.
Huh?
Briefly, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just very briefly, as to the binding nature of a plebiscite or a referenda, the reason why I use referenda is because it's legally correct, but my friend Juan is absolutely right that people in Puerto Rico have referred to it and will always refer to it as a plebiscite for nuances, local nuances purposes. But it should not be a surprise to anybody who has seen and has studied the historical accession of territories into the Union to see that this is a non-binding plebiscite. Normally the way it happens is that the territory that wants accession into the Union, or for that matter separation from the Union, has a number of ways of doing it, traditionally by a vote and a petition to Congress, which then passes an enabling act. We are not doing it that way because of the particular nature of Puerto Rico.
Well, Xavier, let me clarify something here. Yeah. This year, the group that you represent, the pro-statehood people, lobbied Congress very strongly to try to get Congress to go along with this plebiscite. You were not successful. Miguel, why did you go ahead and plan this plebiscite now next month in December anyway?
But Miguel, let me just say this. Not only did the stated, quote-unquote, the stated party do that, I was a member of the cabinet until a month ago, and I was the person in Washington, D.C. lobbying. So I can tell you from personal experience that some of the representations that have been made as to why this plebiscite did not pass are simply untrue. It's just that the Commonwealth Party, contrary to the Independence Party, did everything it could with the right-wing Republicans to oppose passage. But we have vast support on the Democratic Party. vast support of the president. We had support of the speaker. We had support of Gephardt. We had support of the majority of the people in the House who voted.
It passed by one vote in the House.
Oh, absolutely. It passed by one vote in the House because I believe that the Commonwealthers very ably, and I tip my hat to them, represented the people in Puerto Rico as being welfare-ridden, barefoot livers of welfare.
Well,
that's what they sold to the Republicans.
Let me toss a question to all of you.
Yeah.
When the House passed it by one vote, the Senate did not take it up. Therefore, Congress is not bound by the December 13 plebiscite. Aren't the statehood forces taking a major gamble by holding this plebiscite in December? What happens if they lose again twice within a period of 5 years?
It will be the end for the statehood movement, as I see it, because there's no other chance to do this. The time is now. We have to do this now. By the way, the Young bill, as approved in the lower house, the House of Representatives, basically was changed in the Senate because they thought it was too onerous, and they said, well, these things don't apply, and it was accused of being overly pro-statehood. So basically, the Senate drew up a draft that was distributed prior to the end of the session. And basically, if you look at that draft presented by Senator Mikulski, it's a long distance. The Senate maintains a long distance of accepting anything that even smells of incorporation of Puerto Rico into the United States.
Mm-hmm. By the way, if anything, what the Senate offered was to make Puerto Rico an incorporated territory, not a state. It's very clear in the Senate that they're not willing to consider Puerto Rico for statehood. If anything, they would extend federal taxes to Puerto Rico because of the cost that statehood would have. Let me clarify, too, that the state legislature, the Commonwealth legislature, the Puerto Rico legislature approved this law on their First Amendment, which is, these are the desires of the people of Puerto Rico. Well, the option that is most desired by Puerto Ricans, Commonwealth, it's not in the ballot. So we have nowhere else to vote but to go to option 5. And we're going to show the governor that he cannot keep with his whims and his dictatorial attitudes of imposing whatever he wants.
So is that what you aim to do? Everybody that supports Commonwealth?
It's voting on option 5, not the above, everybody that, yeah. So don't be fooled by the lot of money that the Commonwealth government, in this case the statehood governor, has hired, and through Xavier, who's here, they hired tons of lobbyists. I work in Washington, D.C. with the largest law firm there. Almost the whole town is hired by the Puerto Rico government with public funds to promote nothing else but statehood. The option that lost the plebiscite in '93 imposed by the statehood governor. Then we win, and they didn't even give us 1 cent to try to get the enhancement of Commonwealth. And here we are in front of a ballot that doesn't even include Commonwealth, the preferred choice.
There is different definitions of Commonwealth, by the way. This is a process that, since 1989, there's been drafted many propositions of different Commonwealths. We don't know what the Popular Democratic Party stands for right now. And just to correct Javier, option number 4 is for a Democratic Republic of Puerto Rico, and the association with the United States is basically what option number 2 is sponsoring, which is a free association arrangement, even though our relationship with the United States under a republic would be under a mutual treaty of cooperation and friendship.
Jaime, I couldn't, Juan, I couldn't agree more with you. What I meant is that there's a 4th and a 5th option that traditionally were not available, either in 1967 or in 1993. We can call them Associated Republic or Federated Republic, as in the case of Micronesia. That's just by way of example. But what's very interesting every time I speak to on this issue is the complaint that Commonwealth is not found in the definitions. The trick is in the definitions. You see, the Commonwealth Party has very ably, again, I tip my hat to the Commonwealth Party, come up with anywhere between 20 and 75 different definitions of Commonwealth. So what happens is that they do not want to put down a definition of Commonwealth because they will know that in putting down what Commonwealth specifically offers to the people of Puerto Rico, they may alienate a percentage of their own political base. Of course, they want to use, therefore, the name Commonwealth because it is a type of title that allows everybody to think, oh, if I'm voting on the Commonwealth, I am voting for this, my idea of
Xavier, I don't have, it's not the name, Xavier. We have a definition, and we've made it public.
You've had many
We have made a
definitions,
definition
Jaime.
public, but what they want is, remember again, they are writing the rules. This is a farce. This process is a farce to try to create the artificial majority
Before
of
we
state.
go on with discussion on the technicalities of the plebiscite, let's talk about what the different options offer the Puerto Rican people, the concerns, for example, language, culture, citizenship. Let's just take those 3 points: language, culture, and citizenship. How do the options you represent are going to affect the future of Puerto Rico in terms of language, culture, and the citizenship of Puerto Ricans, not only in Puerto Rico but here in the on the mainland?
Well, I think that the independence movement has supported those issues since the beginning. Language, culture. We affirm that Puerto Rico is a nation, even though not a nation state, not in the juridical sense. But it is a nation nevertheless, a people with a common language, common history, common culture, common territory. And we are a majority in our nation. And we do not want to be lumped into another nation and become a minority. Basically, I think that over the years, there has been a working relationship between the Commonwealthers and the United States in order to put aside the independence issue. I mean, we struggled, we have suffered persecution, we have suffered imprisonment, but we're here heroically, even though we represent a minority of the electoral votes in Puerto Rico. But most importantly, the nationality of Puerto Rico is a majority in Puerto Rico.
Let me go to Xavier. Xavier, the argument that is always used against statehood is the problem of language and culture. People feel that they're going to lose the Spanish language, the Puerto Rican culture, if Puerto Rico becomes a state. How do you deal with that?
I think those issues are very important, but they're not the real issue. I think they are what they call strawman or excuses for an issue. It is well known in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has had as official languages in the island English and Spanish since 1902. That's longer than any other state of the Union. For example, Nebraska initially adopted its English-only policy in 1920. We have had states of the Union that constitutionally recognize more than one language and have been admitted into the Union recognizing one language other than English as a co-equal language, as in the case of Nuevo Mexico. I don't see here anybody pushing Nuevo Mexico away.
Do they speak Spanish in New Mexico? Do they speak Hawaiian in Hawaii? Do they speak another language in Alaska other than English in the educational system and in the government? Do they speak another language?
Absolutely. In Nuevo Mexico, there is no problem. Absolutely.
Do they speak Spanish in their educational system? Do they teach in Spanish? And do they?
It is a constitutional requirement.
That is not the reality.
Let's give Javier a shot here. Jaime offers the best of both worlds, right?
But that's basically it. Yeah, we are a nation. There's no doubt about that. We have our, going to Puerto Rico, it's going to our homeland. That is our nation. That's where we're from. We are a people with our own, once again, identity, language, nationality. We have an Olympic team in the Olympics that plays against the United States. We have our own Miss Universe candidate that has won 3 times in the last 30 years. So this is clear. This is why statehood for Puerto Rico is incompatible. Statehood for Puerto Rico is impossible. And obviously they're trying to force the issue. The U.S. Congress has already implied it in 89 to 91 when we tried to do this process. First of all, we don't want it, and second of all, the United States doesn't want it. This is a pluribus unum, a nation of many to become one, not to make it 2 nations.
One more issue before we run out of time, and it's going to happen soon. What happens to Puerto Ricans here on the mainland, in New Jersey, in New York, who want to vote in the plebiscite? Should they have the right to vote from here? A lot of Puerto Ricans feel that, a 2-3 hour flight from Puerto Rico doesn't make them any less Puerto Ricans, and they should be entitled.
Under international law, people are the people of the island, and both the Independence Party as well as the Commonwealth Party in 1993 and now in 1998 has supported that the Puerto Ricans outside the nation, outside Puerto Rico, be able to participate.
It's not going to happen, though.
But it's not going to happen because the stateholders realize that they don't have a majority of the Puerto Ricans because those people have been in a state and they already know that that's not what they want for their homeland.
Juan.
We do support the participation of the other part of the Puerto Rican nation that is outside of Puerto Rico, but we want to keep in mind that we don't want to make this issue something of an obstacle to hold back the process process of self-determination of Puerto Rico, because this issue has to be solved. There's ways and processes that could be done in terms of the voter participation, and the statehood party does not want the Puerto Ricans in the United States to participate.
Juan, why can't Puerto Ricans vote from here? I'm sorry, Xavier on the telephone. Why can't Puerto Ricans vote from here?
Well, the reality is very simple. I mean, think of a situation of having family. I reside here, and I've resided here for a long time. And I have a particular preference. I do not have any intention of going back, nor do I have residency in Puerto Rico. If I had residency in Puerto Rico, of course, like any other state of the Union, I would be able to vote. But think of the irony of having 3 million Puerto Ricans here, many of whom may state that they do want to go back, but may not go back, and essentially throw the elections and make Puerto Rico, for example, an independent country, where they would not have to live the consequences of being an independent country and would continue to have congressional representation, while denying that congressional representation to the people of Puerto Rico, who as a state would have 2 senators and 6 to 8 representatives. The converse is true with any of the alternatives. The irony of continue to force our community here, forcing those who live in the island to have to live with the issue, it is contrary to fairness, not to mention, of course, who is going to foot the bill, who is a Puerto Rican, who is going to foot the bill of all of the of having every Puerto Rican here vote in a particular election. It's unworkable.
I'm glad to hear he's concerned about the budget.
We're out of time.
In Washington,
unfortunately, we're out of time, but the argument that's always made against that is that there are a lot of non-Puerto Ricans who live on the island who will get to vote in the plebiscite, and Puerto Ricans here will not. So I'm sorry that we don't have more time to discuss it. Thank you, all 3 of you, for being on the program. And I want to remind our viewers that now you can check out the topics that we'll be discussing on this program at www.njlatinos.com. See you next week on another edition of Imágenes. Hasta pronto.